Welcome back once again, Canonites. As y'all may recall, in addition to the TV series itself, the Silver Timeline is fleshed out by a piece of marketing known as Dr. Catherine Halsey's Computer, a website at halotheseries.tv. Launched following the premiere of the TV series, the website, styled after Dr. Halsey's computer from the show, contains additional information on the characters, locations, and happenings of the TV series. In a previous video, which should be popping up in the info box about now, I covered the first couple of weeks worth of content from the website. If you're interested in that information, you'll need to watch that first. I'm not going to cover repeat info. But if you've already seen it or just don't care, let's begin diving into the information that's been released since. And as with the episode breakdowns, comparisons to core canon, the canon of the games, and other Halo media are not to be considered criticisms unless specified. I want to start today with a quick observation about the website itself. As stated, it's formally designated Dr. Catherine Halsey's Computer, and it bears a strikingly similar function to another of Dr. Halsey's belongings from the core canon, Dr. Halsey's personal journal. Copies of this journal were printed for the limited and legendary editions of Halo Reach. The pages within contain the thoughts and drawings of Dr. Halsey from 2510 up until her rescue by Noble Team during the fall of Reach in 2552. In addition to providing a look at Halsey's thoughts and struggles in more detail than ever before, the book contained tons of new lore, fleshing out details surrounding Cortana, the Spartan 2 program Halo Reach, and more. It was a lore nerd's dream come true. Incidentally, the journal was authored by Eric Nyland, the man behind many of Halo's early novels, in conjunction with Bungie and 343 Industries, with longtime Bungie artist Lorraine McLeese serving as art director and Mike Valancourt illustrating. Additionally, any who saw the previous video will recall that one of the interactive elements on the page was a keyboard into which codes could be entered. When writing the previous video, I was unaware of its function. For any who remain unaware, codes that can be found on Instagram can be entered into the keyboard, unlocking a new clip each week, a preview of the episode to come. For now, that's all. From there, let's dive into the website once again. We'll cover the web content 1 week at a time, meaning we'll have 3 weeks of information to cover. We start, of course, with the graphic content that appears when the site loads. For week 3, we had the neural scan of Halsey's clone's brain seen in episode 3, which resulted in the creation of Cortana. The visualization here isn't too far off from what one might see in core canon, though there, a subject luckily doesn't have to be alive and awake of all things for the process. Additionally, an audio message from Cortana appeared, which really just tells visitors what the website does. After week 3, the message would continue to appear on the website. Moving over to character profiles, we naturally start with Master Chief. Following the events of episode 3, the Chief is now assigned to Cortana integration testing, which is classified as part of Project Aster, aka the Spartan 2 augmentations. Essentially, Cortana is considered here an additional augmentation. Additionally, Cortana-specific monitoring is in effect via designated neural interface control channels. This marks, I do believe, the first mention of the neural interface in the Silver Timeline, which fans might know better as a neural lace, aka that thing the Chief had to punch out of Captain Keyes' skull in Halo CE. God, can you imagine that scene in live action if the TV show ever gets to those events in a future season? Jeez. Anyway, the neural interface is a standard piece of tech found in the heads of all UNSC service members in core canon. Typically little more than an identification tag, more advanced versions are often installed in Spartans and officers. The neural interface is vital to the operation of Mjolnir in core canon, in addition to being how Cortana interacts with the Chief and Mjolnir when she's plugged in. In the case of officers like Captain Keyes, theirs will contain command codes and other information and functions. Moving on to Silver Team, we start with Riz028, whose profile doesn't link too much to the episode. We find that she's collating a report on the integration of Acheron Security's SmartLink protocol updates with Mjolnir firmware. Acheron Security is another Gen 2 Mjolnir manufacturer, also known for the sticky detonator and railgun. Next, we see that Riz has submitted a revised draft of a research paper on the hybridization of Revian red crests to the Exosolar Conservation Journal. First, the journal and the Revian red crest, a bird local to Reach in the Silver Timeline, are both new to the TV series. Second though, as I believe I've mentioned before, Spartans are more than just frontline troops. In core canon, Spartan 2s received an extensive education, making them some of the UNSC's best minds. Spartans that survived but were crippled by the augmentation processes were reassigned elsewhere in the UNSC to make use of those minds. One Spartan washout, Fajad 084, went on to author a paper on slipspace physics in 2540, which would later be used by then-Commander Jacob Keyes to predict Covenant forces approaching the colony of Sigma Octantis IV in 2552. Unlike Fajad, however, Riz in the Silver Timeline has to submit her papers under an approved pseudonym. I'm curious if that might come into play later. We next come to Kai 125, who is noted as conducting an evaluation of mission reports from a new operation called Judge Abstract. Finally, we come to Vanek 134. By episode 3, Vanek has volunteered to test updates to Project Keen Luna's Phantom Flight Simulator. Keen Luna is the project Miranda Keyes is assigned to and seemingly oversees, and seems to be about studying all aspects of the Covenant. Additionally, it's noted that Vanek has been accessing Reach civilian networks to participate in ranked X-Chess matches. X-Chess, I assume, being the game we saw Vanek and Riz playing in episode 3. These unauthorized activities are apparently being suppressed under an unknown individual's authority, probably Halsey, with Vanek's strategies being forwarded to CC409871. That's Halsey's civilian consultant number. It's interesting that we see these small expressions of personality from Vanek and Riz, hacking networks to play chess, authoring scientific papers, despite both Spartans still having their emotion-suppressing pellets. In fact, I've recently begun to wonder if the pellets were entirely Halsey's idea in the Silver Timeline, and whether John removing his pellet isn't part of some plan Halsey is orchestrating. Additionally, the profiles for each Spartan of Silver Team ends by noting that each Spartan is functioning properly, setting up for Kai's actions in episode 4. Moving on though, we next come to Commander Miranda Keyes. Her profile notes her assignment to a parallel team, as Parangoski put it, to study the magical artifact, formerly known as Project Glasslake. Under this, we find a note from everyone's favorite creep, Dr. Aidan Saley, detailing measures to tap Miranda's systems and archive the data in a shadow cluster. As we saw in episode 3 before leaving, Dr. Halsey had sabotaged her daughter's efforts to research the artifact. Coming next to Captain Jacob Keyes, his profile shows that assessments of the power surge from episode 1 have been forwarded to the Castle Operations Team. This team is named after Castle Base, one of 2 primary Oni bases on Reach in the core canon. Dr. Halsey's main lab was located in Castle Base for years, and it made its first on-screen appearance in Halo 5's prologue cutscene. Back to the profile, we additionally see that Keyes has filed a report on the loss of the UNSC Gladius, recommending recovery of the ship for forensic study. We next come to Admiral Margaret Parangoski, who at the moment is merely reviewing reports on the Madrigal artifact and doing general evaluations on personnel and programs. Soren, Quan, and Jin Ha's profiles remain the same as they were as of Week 2. Week 3 saw the addition of Cortana's profile. Like core canon, Silver Cortana's serial number is CTN0452-9. The notes reveal that the clone we saw sacrificed to create Cortana was labeled as H1, same as in core canon. The next note mentions Deja training protocols, which is going to be a bit of a discussion, so strap in. In core canon, Deja was the name of an AI that assisted Dr. Halsey with the Spartan 2 program and taught the young Spartans. Unlike a smart AI like Cortana, an AI created by a scan of a human brain, Deja was a dumb AI, or an AI created with traditional programming methods, such as the Superintendent from Halo 3 ODST. That said, as I've noted in my episode breakdowns, the UNSC of the Halo TV series doesn't seem to have any sort of AIs in the same way core canon does. We know that low-level AI are used, such as the AI that controlled the Condor in episode 1, and discussion of the creation of Cortana, and especially the depiction of her creation, heavily imply that the TV show's Cortana is the first of what we would typically call smart AI. All of this is to say that Deja being mentioned on the website is probably a different program from the core canon version. Hell, it could be that all Deja are these training protocols. Anyway though, Cortana's Week 3 profile comes to a close, noting that her consciousness has been confirmed and that the emerging complexities of her core processes are exceeding standard models. Par for the course compared to her core canon counterpart. With that, we can now move on to Week 4. The website opens now with a looping scan of the Madrigal artifact, which we actually saw on Dr. Halsey's computer screen right here. I looked it over, but I couldn't make out anything of significance. Moving right into the character profiles, we start with the Master Chief, who is now assigned as special security on Halsey's ship, the Endymion II. It's additionally noted that Oni Section 2, the propaganda arm of Oni, wants access to John for the creation of a standby PR containment narrative in regards to his recent behavior. This is fairly similar to what Oni was doing in the Hunt the Truth audio drama, where they hired photojournalist Ben Giraud to craft a fake history for the Master Chief. This would cover up Oni kidnapping the Chief and other Spartans as children, and the project was initiated following Halo 4, when the Chief in core canon was starting to act erratic. Moving to Silver Team, all members have been assigned to assist in the artifact research under Admiral Perengoski's direction. In Riz 028's profile, we find that an Ohana Prescient Systems liaison has requested Riz test their Rev 9 SmartLink software enhancements. Ohana Prescient Systems would probably best be recognized as the creators of the Artemis tracking system in Halo 5. Under Kai 125's profile, we can see that Halsey is already aware of Kai removing her pellet, logging the Spartans' ongoing performance. At that time, Kai's results were within second-order estimates, basically meaning she's functioning just fine for now. It's also noted that she'd completed marksmanship refresher training. Vanek's profile doesn't have too much additional info for Week 4, only really noting recent firmware updates to his Mjolnir. This could be meant as a callback to Halo 4.
I rewrote your seat firmware while you were out.
Coming again to Dr. Miranda Keyes, we find that the results of her tests with the Spartans, as seen in Episode 4, have been filed, and Halsey's spying software archived the data in that shadow cluster. We can also see that progress on the Sangheili language has been made, which we saw in Episode 4. We next skip forward to Cortana, the profiles for Captain Keyes, Admiral Perengoski, and Quan and Jin Ha receiving no updates for Week 4. Cortana's profile simply notes her ongoing integration with Spartan 117 and the integration of the UEG and UNSC databases mentioned by both Halsey in Episode 3 and John in the most recent episode. New for Week 4 is a profile on the Colonial Governor of Madrigal, Venture Grath. Things get interesting right off the bat, the profile noting that Venture is a former security analyst for the Department of Colonial Security. The DCS was basically the Colonial Administration Authority's ONI, an intelligence organization to monitor the inner and outer colonies. The DCS would eventually be folded into ONI following the depths of the corruption in the CAA being exposed, at least in core canon. Continuing through Venture's profile, we see that analysis of his career and any punitive entries in his records have been expunged by, quote, direction of Representatives Penma and Agnoli, and elimination of evidence of Venture's terrorist acts and insurrectionist collaboration is ongoing. Representatives Penma and Agnoli were these two individuals from Episode 2, and I erroneously called Agnoli here Colonel Stacker in my Episode 2 breakdown. This is Colonel Stacker. Back to Venture, his profile closes with a note that his status as Governor of Madrigal was approved by Admiral Hood himself in accordance with UEG emergency declarations. In core canon, the Unified Earth Government, or UEG, would eventually step back as the UNSC issued emergency orders and took effective control of the government during the Human Covenant War. This, or something like it, is likely what the profile is referencing. We now come to our final week for this video, updated following the most recent episode. The website now opens with scans of John's childhood drawings. Getting into the character profiles, the updates for the Master Chief largely reflect Episode 5's events, mentioning the completed integration of Cortana and the continued recovery of John's memories due to the artifacts. Interestingly though, there's a mention of, quote, emergent synergies that we did not account for, essentially setting up the deeper partnership Chief and Cortana would develop later on. Master Chief's mission area has also now been changed to Direct Action Sector 1 Defiant Glass, finally matching the assignments for the rest of Silver Team. Speaking of which, the members of Silver Team's profiles each address their injuries from Episode 5. Riz 028 reported minor injuries, and diagnostics have shown that additional augmentation protocol monitoring is required. The core canon has never really talked about augmentation maintenance for Spartan 2s, or 3s for that matter, though interestingly, the special menu background that came to MCC when Halo 4 was added to MCC on PC has a rare mention of the Chief requiring augmentation maintenance. Moving over to Kai 125, we can see that she's been successfully stabilized, though her performance metrics continue to degrade. Her Mjolnir has sustained critical systems damage, with shield generators and other systems requiring maintenance. On that note, I hadn't thought about this while writing the episode 5 breakdown, but Kai, the sniper of the team I want to point out, being under assault by overwhelming plasma fire is kind of reminiscent of something that happened to Linda 058, Blue Team's sniper, in Halo: The Fall of Reach. Quote, "A bolt of plasma struck her in the back. Another bolt of fire blazed from the upper decks and splashed across her front. She crumpled, her shields flickered and went out. 2 more bolts hit her in the chest, a third smashed into her helmet." Obviously, Linda's situation was a bit more severe, but still I wanted to mention that parallel. Moving over to Vanek 134, he too only reported minor injuries, and his Mjolnir diagnostics have been forwarded to FleetCom to prioritize its repair and maintenance. Dr. Miranda Keyes' profile notes her removal from Project Glasslake, the study of the Madrigal and now Eridanus 2 artifacts. Following this, she filed a formal complaint, though it was naturally rejected. And following the events of Episode 5, she also reported only minor injuries, and her debriefing has yet to be filed. In the meantime, Jacob Keyes' profile shows that the captain is currently coordinating the evac of research and security personnel from Eridanus 2, and he's forwarded the sensor logs of the Pioneer for further analysis. We can see the Pioneer's hull number here, DD-440. The Double D identifies the ship as a Halberd-class light destroyer. Up next is Admiral Parangoski, who is reviewing technical assessments of the CCS-class battlecruiser, confirming the class of the ship seen in Episode 5. While I jumped to call it a CCS myself in my breakdown video, a few comments on there reminded me that there are a couple other ships with the exact same design as the CCS, though not the size. So it's good to get that confirmation. Parangoski's profile goes on to note that the Admiral has put out several requests for any data on Eridanus 2 and the Reach for Life project, which Halsey has mirrored for her own review. And based on that last line, Halsey does this on the regular. We close out the character profiles on Cortana now, the profiles for Soren, Venture, and the Haas once again receiving no updates. As of Episode 5, it's reported that Cortana has fully integrated with John's limbic system, the part of the brain involved with behavioral and emotional responses. It's also noted that her control of the neural bridge between her and John is stable and available on demand. I didn't make this clear in my Episode 5 breakdown, but Cortana's ability to control John is essentially an on and off switch at Halsey's disposal. When Cortana was first brought online, she was shocked to discover this fact, having believed that she would be afforded full control of the Spartan. As I recall, Halsey was never told, directly or otherwise, to make this change, further making me suspicious of what Halsey is really up to. Cortana's profile ends with a note that her neural network complexity is growing beyond Halsey's estimates. That mostly covers the updates to Halsey's computer over the last few weeks, but any who have been following the site's development know that there are also planetary profiles, providing additional details on some of the locations mentioned and seen in the show so far. I've covered the information for Earth, Reach, Madrigal, the Rubble, and High Charity in my previous video on the website, and as the information hasn't changed since then, I won't be covering them here. Just so everyone's aware. Now, in the last few weeks, 2 new planetary profiles have been added. First, we have Mamore, a planet mentioned in Episode 3 as the place where Spartan Nora 098 died. Nora has no core canon counterpart, though Mamore does. In the core canon, Mamore is an outer colony with a history of insurrection and rebellion. I go into more detail on it in my breakdown of Episode 3. In the Silver timeline, Mamore is a planet just a little smaller than Reach, though with surprisingly stronger gravity, perhaps the result of a denser core. As of 2537, it boasted a population of 490 million. Mamore is a Stage 1 terraformed biosphere with native Earth life adapted to the planet, and is located in what the UNSC designates as Defense Zone Yankee. It's currently under a security cordon. As for its history, Mamore was a priority target for colonization during humanity's second wave of extrasolar colonization. In core canon, humanity experienced a first wave of extrasolar colonization beginning in 2362, starting with Reach and expanding from there. Known as the Domus Diaspora, these first major colonization efforts recruited colonists from among the best and brightest humanity had to offer at the time, many of the planets established early on becoming the inner colonies. A second major wave of colonization began in the early 2400s, reaching for more distant worlds, these becoming the outer colonies. Similar events played out in the Silver timeline, with Mamore's initial colonists coming from the Jovian habitat clusters around Jupiter. and, luckily in Mamore's case, imported flora and fauna were quick to adapt to the new environment. Like the core canon version, Silver Mamore was a hotbed of insurrection activity, the profile even mentioning the Freedom and Liberation Party and its bombing of the Haven Arcology, resulting in the death of 2 million civilians. These same events also occurred in the core canon, and to tie things briefly back to the beginning of the video, these details were first revealed in Dr. Halsey's journal. Like core canon, the UNSC has cracked down on the planet, including the use of Spartans, though insurrectionists remain active. In core canon, some of those targeted Spartan strikes were undertaken by Spartan 3s, which I would love to see in a future season. Additionally, Mamore was a refugee collection and processing point during the anti-insurrection campaigns of Operation Trebuchet, and later for evacuations from Fleetcom Sectors 1 and 2 during the Human Covenant War. Operation Trebuchet in core canon was a years-long anti-insurrection campaign by the UNSC, which Sergeant Avery Johnson notably took part in. Finally, we come to Eridanus 2, the Master Chief's homeworld. As I've previously noted, Eridanus 2 in the Silver Timeline is radically different from its core canon counterpart, where it had 2 large cities by the time John was kidnapped for the Spartan 2 program. In the Silver Timeline, Eridanus 2 was selected for the Reach for Life program's experimental terraforming in 2440, though it wouldn't be until 2497 that permanent habitats were laid down. Records show counterinsurgency activity in the surrounding Eridanus system during the time the colony was active, which was hinted at in Episode 5.
The colonial insurrection touched everyone, even here, on our little out-of-the-way planet.
As was mentioned in Episode 3, however, the colony was locked down following a biomedical emergency, which apparently took place on March 5th, 2530, the same year in core canon that Eridanus 2 was glassed by the Covenant. Survivors were evacuated to the colonies of Arcadia and New Jerusalem. In core canon, refugees from Eridanus 2 were evacuated there as well years earlier when fleeing from the insurrection. Fans may also recognize Arcadia from Halo Wars 1. Now, all of this contradicts what Cortana told John in Episode 3 about Eridanus 2 and the Reach for Life program, saying in there that he was adopted by Dr. Halsey following a disease outbreak on the planet. However, as we see here, that outbreak didn't happen until 2530, more than a decade after John was kidnapped for the Spartan program. Once again, I can't help but draw parallels to the Hunt the Truth marketing campaign when Ben Giro was finding similar holes in the stories Oni were selling him about the Master Chief's history. With that though, I think we can wrap up this little update on the Halo TV series website. Going forward, I hope to make individual update videos following each episode, but we'll see how things play out. For now, I hope you all enjoyed this look at the expanded lore of the Silver Timeline. Until next time, this has been Halo Canon.